Good morning, my cafecito friends, my extrovert therapists. Thank you for joining me this morning. It's going to be a great day here in the beautiful Tierra del Encanto, New Mexico, the land of enchantment. It's going to be about 88 degrees today on this fantastic Thursday, the 23rd day of July. And we are really going to be enjoying some great cooler weather today with about a 30 to 40% chance of a little bit of precipitation. So be ready to enjoy a cooler day today. And you can plan your exercise around that a little more easily, not having to run in 100-degree heat. It's been hot. Alfonso, you staying cool?
Absolutely. Well, I guess I'm trying. It's hot.
Thanks for joining me today.
Hey, thank you. Absolute. My pleasure. Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna get ready to post some links up and then we'll have our great visit here. All right. This one. Good morning, Selena and Teresa Marie. Buenos dias, Dr. McCarthy. Thanks for being with us and being so faithful as one of my extrovert therapists. Charles Ashley III made it out today. He's here to hear from Alfonso. June O'Neill, great to see you, Madam Chair, coming in live. Glad you're with us today. Thank you for joining me today. And it's good to see you. Good to be online with you this morning. And it's going to be a great day here on Cafecito. I've got lots of national links we're going to put up. And then we will get some local news. And then we will get right to Alfonso Thompson. He's a tremendous leader. And I'm so honored that he said yes, that he would join us today on Cafecito con Colon. So look, we got lots of things going on. Today will be the private funeral service for C.T. Vivian, phenomenal civil rights leader, pastor, just a tremendous human being who made his mark in America in a very big way. He passed away at the young age of 95 years old. 95 years old. He'll be buried in Georgia. I think he was laying in state in Georgia's capital either yesterday or today. He'll be laying in state, or he did lay in state. It was yesterday. He laid in state inside the state capitol, and really was just a tremendous figure in the civil rights movement, and dear friend of and counselor to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Good morning, Dr. Roybal. Speaking of good doctors, Dr. Roybal is with us this morning. Wendy, good to have you back with us. I look forward to our call later this afternoon. And the Honorable Dennis Tim Salazar, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. Honorable, it's great to have you with us this morning. And Elizabeth, you're another one, man. Thank you for never missing. Appreciate you being with us. So there's the story on USA Today regarding the good pastor. The other one, of course, who I have been honoring daily on Cafecito con Colon as we amplify Black voices. I wonder why my comments are unable to post. That's kind of strange. Let's see here if this one will post up. This one here, of course, is for John Lewis. That one seemed to post okay. I couldn't post the first one. Nope, they're not posting. I wonder why. Well, I'm going to open up a new Facebook window there, see if I do any better. So John Lewis continues to be memorialized in a way in which he should be. And what a phenomenal transformational figure. And this particular USA Today story does a great job taking us back to Selma, where his, hopefully that post, there we go. Now we've got good connectivity on that Facebook link. But this is the USA Today story, but check out check this out. This is a really good one that I found, I think on NPR. Yeah. NPR had this amazing story on their series called America Reckoning with Racial Injustice. But no, this is the one about John Muir. But this is a good one too. Let me hit this one real quick on John Muir, who, as we get ready to celebrate some phenomenal leadership in Congress, and the president has already said he's going to sign this legislation, but this is regarding our incredible national treasures, our outdoor space, and actually finally receiving the funding that was committed to outdoor space so many years ago. But the leader of the movement to protect our outdoor space and our national parks was John Muir. And he unfortunately, in his advocacy on one hand, which was so phenomenal, he was so uninformed, misinformed, and had so many racist views that have come to light. And the Sierra Club, which has provided many accolades to John Muir over the years, taking down his monuments and really being candid and honest about his full legacy. And I guess that's really one of the things we all have to reckon, right? What's the full legacy of any human being, and how do we look at that balance sheet, so to speak, and how do we celebrate one's legacy in their positive respects, while also being candid and open about other areas of their lives where there is pain and there was bad behavior and ill-informed opinions, and how do we reconcile all that? I think the best way we can do that is to really have a full accounting and full candor about the good, the bad, and the ugly. Here is the link that I wanted to post up. It wasn't NPR that had this powerful story. It was on The Conversation, which, as you know, I'm a huge fan of this website that has academic rigor and journalistic flair. And in their arts and culture tab today, I think it was posted today, this is takes us back to Selma and the Honorable John Lewis's beating on Bloody Sunday, and how his image in his long tan trench coat and his backpack, which he reenacted on the bridge, on the Pettus Bridge, how he really, in those images, he is a focal point, but didn't get his immediate due on that story. But that image went viral, and this really speaks about what the state troopers were doing at the time, and why that particular image went viral, which was interesting to me. I didn't know, but that night, ABC was airing for the first time The Judgment at Nuremberg, which of course is a powerful production that went on to win an Academy Award that dealt with the culpability of those who participated in the Holocaust, of course. But they were airing The Judgment at Nuremberg, and they broke into that with the images of Bloody Sunday. And this article, along with its links, I think there are some additional links and some video in here regarding Charles Kuralt's coverage and things of that nature. But anyway, I think you will enjoy going back to this piece on there. And there is that for you. And let's see, Alfonso, are you also streaming on Facebook? Do you have a Facebook stream up?
Not on my computer.
That's fine, no problem. I just wanted to check in.
I do have it. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I just wanted to check in to make sure we're still streaming well on our Facebook. I think Mike Silva just checked in, so I think we're good. Okay, good. I'm gonna stay focused here and keep moving. So please check out that John Lewis story, a very powerful piece on The Conversationalist. So now let me get to our local, as we're at 9:09. This is the editorial that I wanted to tie in to the John Muir piece, but this is what Congress did this week in terms of supporting the bill that passed in the Senate. And this was in the Albuquerque Journal today. Of course, New Mexico has a huge connection with this legislation, whether you think about Carlsbad Caverns and all its deferred maintenance, or the Valles Caldera and our national parks here. This is going to have a huge impact in a very positive way. This funding source that really is supposed to be generated by our extractive industries in the nation, and it was supposed to be funded through this in perpetuity, not out of taxpayer pockets, but out of the those funds that were generated by our extractive industries in the country. And historically, what has happened is Congress has taken those monies and reallocated them as opposed to what they were originally intended and purposed for. And this legislation that passed now secures, after 50 years, the Land and Water Conservation Fund. And we have so many great connections to this, whether it's Stuart Udall, who the Interior Building is named after in Washington, D.C., the father of Senior Senator Udall, and his deep connection to this work, and the continued good work of Senator Udall and Congressman Heinrich in regard to our national parks and open space. So check that out. Good news. And the president has already indicated that he's going to sign that legislation. So that is in a good place and space. Very, very exciting. Hey, this was a great one. I haven't talked about it on Cafecito, but I've been a huge advocate for Project Echo. And it looks like the Albuquerque Journal did a great story about them being a finalist for $100 million grant from the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation. And if you listen to NPR, you know that foundation is huge. I mean, just huge, and funds a lot of NPR work and lots of great social profit, nonprofit work in America. And they are a finalist for this. And Dr. Aurora talked about how humbled and excited they are to be a part in this final funding round, especially during the time of the global pandemic and the need for global networks that provide rapid dissemination of best practices and collaborative problem solving in the healthcare sector. So that ECHO project has received international acclaim, and it is really a shining star at the University of New Mexico and UNMH and our flagship Division I research institution, that is UNM, Go Lobos. So the other thing I wanted to point out was a story in today's journal about the growth of the coronavirus, that it is leveling off. The transfer rate, or the spread rate, is now at 1 or below, and the governor is going to do a press conference this afternoon about schools reopening and things like that. Thank you for everybody that's sharing our video this morning. That's going to increase our views. We range anywhere from 1,000 to 2,500 views a day of Cafecito con Colon, and with Alfonso being the superstar, today is going to get a lot of hits. But thanks to all of you that are either hosting watch parties, sharing our video. Thanks for those of you that have joined on and liked my Brian Colon State Auditor page. Thank you for doing that. I appreciate all the connectivity and the feedback. Here's actually a link to the legislation for that huge funding stream that's going to be recommitted and dedicated by Congress on the Land and Water Conservation Fund. I wanted to point out that there's a great interactive map here for those of you that need testing. We know that the hospitals are now restricting the testing to those who are symptomatic. So if you're asymptomatic, you need to find another testing site. The last thing I want to post up as we hit 9:13 this morning is lots of people today are going to be talking about the Operation Legend that is going to be on the ground. The expansion of that program is going to hit New Mexico, Albuquerque in particular. Here is the official press release. Now, I just want to make sure that we at least know what the feds are saying. Now, the federal government sometimes doesn't have a perfect track record on their actions reflecting their words. But I will say that I wanted to post up the DOJ link to the actual information coming out, and then today's journal story about Operation Legend and whether or not we can anticipate what the horrible things we've seen, read, and heard about what went on in Portland. Completely inappropriate, in my opinion, from a legal standpoint, from a moral standpoint. Absolutely unbelievable what happened to the protesters in Portland, and it was an atrocity. But according to the feds, according to the DOJ, that's not the operation that's coming to Albuquerque. It remains to be seen. We will continue to monitor that. I'm thankful our Attorney General Hector Balderas has indicated he will continue to closely monitor that operation and the feds and their activity in our land of enchantment. So thank you, Attorney General Balderas, for that care and attention that you're giving to that issue. So at 9:15, the last post I'm going to give you is related to the announcement that's important. Like I mentioned, today at 3 o'clock, Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham will host a press conference. These usually run about 2 hours phenomenally. And she will provide an update on the school openings. I'm sure that her team will give us an update on the spread rate being below 1 or at 1 and what we anticipate in the weeks ahead. But for sure, she will focus on the education next steps in New Mexico. So check that out. I posted her Facebook page, the governor's Facebook page, because that's where it will stream live. I usually am able to host a Facebook Live watch party. And I will tell you, and those of you that have been doing this with me for a while, know that if you watch it on my stream, I tend to attract people that are far more reasonable and may disagree with the governor, but do it in a far more appropriate and respectful way than some of the comments. If you go to the governor's page, you will see comments that are just abhorrent. I mean, just totally disrespectful, totally non-helpful, and really not very enriching in any way. So if you watch on my watch party, you'll get a lot better feedback and comments. Now let's see here. At 9:16 this morning, I'm going to turn my attention to the man of the hour, our special guest today, Alfonso Thompson, and we're so glad that he agreed to come on Cafecito con Colon. Alfonso is the founder of Thompson and Associates LLC, a financial planning and operational consulting firm. Phenomenal leader in the business sector. I first met him years ago when he was working as an ambassador, and he is an ambassador in every sense of the word. Check out that smile. Look, there it is. He's got that great smile, makes him a great ambassador. But he was an ambassador for AED when I first met him. Then he was doing some great work with ABQ West. I think Melissa joins us on most mornings. I hope Melissa's with us this morning. But our paths have crossed many times over the years. He can talk a little bit about that if he likes. But most recently, I've been glad our paths have crossed in our advocacy for providing a place, space, voice, and opportunity for our Black community to be heard in New Mexico. And as I try and provide that space and place here, it was a natural for me to be able to invite him to join us on Cafecito con Colon, of which he instantly accepted. He said, yes, I will do your show, and you just tell me when to show up and I'll be there. And I appreciated his responsiveness. Let me just tell you a little bit more about Alfonso, because currently in his full-time capacity, you know, this gentleman makes the most of every day in all that he does, his deep engagement in his consulting work, in his advocacy, in his leadership with Generational Innovations Technology as their interim CEO. But his full-time gig, so to speak, is with AT&T, where he is the regional vice president. So Mr. Vice President, glad you're with us this morning. He's originally from Detroit, Michigan. He went over to Atlanta, and then he found the light that is the land of enchantment. And this is his home, where he's raising 6 children. He's got 4 beautiful kids who we featured on our photograph as we promoted today's episode. He's been here for 14 years, and we've been really enriched to have him here. He's got an MBA. He furthered his education at the University of Phoenix, and he's just got a great background in strategic management, sales, and operations. And he's got deep roots in our community. And he just, you know, the beauty of Alfonso, and I think the reason his spirit is so warm and he's so embracing when you interact with him is because he finds that light and that energy from his family. And he, I think, every day tries to be an example to his children. And I know he is a positive example for his children. And we're just thrilled to have him here. his goal, and let me just be clear on this, and then we're going to bring you on, Alfonso, to start. But this is really beautiful. Alfonso, his professional vision is to break the status quo in his community and to build cohesive relationships in multiple community sectors by partnering with local leaders that include not just elected officials and state government leaders, but community leaders. And we know so truly now, as we've had now going into 8 or 9 weeks of amplifying Black voices, that there are so many leaders in our community who lead without a title. You don't have to have a title to make a difference. You don't have to have a title to have an impact. And so many of our community leaders lead without a title, and I'm grateful for them. And you bring them together with government officials, with organizations, and you help us all reach our maximum potential. And I'm grateful for it because you lift up New Mexico every day. So with that, I'll just say it is a pleasure, privilege, and honor to bring to you Alfonso Thompson, Mr. Extraordinary. Welcome to Cafecito con Colon.
Hey, Mr. Colon, thank you so much for such an extraordinary introduction. I promise you, in my whole life experience in the corporate world, I've never been introduced like that. So I definitely appreciate that. I really want to take opportunity, guys, to really give more kudos to the man of the hour. And it's not me, it's of course who you see every morning, of course, putting his face, putting his title, putting his name on the line for a amazing cause. And that's getting the word out, of course, of how we can increase our community experience and our understanding about, of course, the Black lives and how we can be better as just people in general, right? So kudos to you, Mr. Colon. Thank you for being that catalyst, for being that, of course, general, I think, in our state of in our great state, excuse me, of New Mexico. So again, thank you so much for having this opportunity to be on your stage.
You bet. It's an honor and privilege to host you. It really is. Tell us, Alfonso, a little bit about your journey in terms of, you had a couple stops on the way to the land of enchantment. So tell us a little bit about that. Help us better understand your lived experience and what I always talk about, the lens you look through each and every day.
Absolutely. So I don't know if people are really ready to hear that, but I'm going to give it to you. I always talk about my life as an open book. So anything you want to ask, anything that people would like to know about me, my life is open book, because I believe my life is absolutely a testament of what somebody else can do and achieve in their life, especially in the African-American community. Well, again, I'm Alfonso Thompson. I'm from Detroit, Michigan. I lived in Detroit, Michigan for the latter part of 14 years. I enjoyed my whole experience in Detroit. Of course, it was a different Detroit than it is today. Growing up as an adolescent, I then moved down to Atlanta, Georgia with my mom. Went down there in the great state of Georgia, enjoyed my time there for 17 years, completed high school and college there. Go Yellow Jackets. Had to throw that out there. And then, of course,
hey, Alfonso, I just want to interrupt you and give you, I don't want to blindside my guests. I need you to know that Al Thompson says that he's cheering for you. He's out there, he's watching. So I just want you to know that. I want to make sure you got some viewers out there of high importance, and he knows you're an open book, and you're going to bring us the difficult dialogue and really talk to us. I mean, you kind of already alluded to the Detroit, because when you were growing up, Detroit was a different community. It was a lot more painful. It didn't have that economic development that it enjoyed after you left, I think, is if I'm getting my timetable right. And so we got, everybody here is giving you a lot of love. I do want to say this, because somebody made a comment that said there's a big difference between leadership and leaders. And I just want to, again, give you a pat on the back, if I may, for being a leader in our community. Thank you for that.
No, I greatly appreciate it. I greatly appreciate the love that everybody's giving me. I believe that I love you guys too. I love my community. I love the great state of New Mexico. But again, like I said, coming from Detroit, that whole experience, of course, leaving at the younger age, tender age of 14, I didn't really understand what we call racism today, right? Not really developing that. I played with everybody. I grew up in an all Black neighborhood where, of course, at that day, right, I grew up old fashioned. So my grandmother, she's from Yazoo. She was from, the late Doris Eola Bradfield Jones, she grew up in Yazoo City, Mississippi. So all
Hey,
of her
hold on. Hold the press. Stop the press, baby. I have never heard of anybody else from Yazoo City, Mississippi. That you know who else is from there, right?
I
My
do
hero,
not.
one of my heroes. And I never heard of anybody else from Yazoo City. But you know that the late great, not just your late great grandma, but the late great Zig Ziglar
Zig Ziglar, yes,
was
he
from
is
Yazoo City, and I never
absolutely.
heard of anybody else from Yazoo City.
He is. He
That
is. He's
is great. He
one of
said
my
he said
favorites.
he's from there, and I got a whole bookshelf full of Zig, and my picture with him hangs in my office in Santa Fe. But you know, he used to say he was from Yazoo City, but he grew up in L.A., Lower Alabama.
Right.
Go
Absolutely.
ahead. I'm sorry. I
Absolutely.
couldn't help but interrupt you on that. Yazoo City. Man, I
No,
never
no,
knew
you're good.
anybody from Yazoo. That's awesome.
No,
Well,
no, you're good.
kudos to
Interrupt me.
grandma there.
This is your show. Interrupt me anytime you want. So yeah,
Carry on.
so my grandmother's from there, of course. So what I was saying was her morals and and things like that. Her mindset, of course, comes from a place of I think it's a good place is what I'm trying to say. And so I was raised in a Christian home. Of course, my mom, of course, living a life as a Christian for a long time, and so I was really sheltered from a lot of the different things that were going on at that particular time. However, moving down to Atlanta, Georgia, that was a whole different story. So,
Yeah.
of course, being down there at 14, 15, I remember one time here, Mr. Cologne, I was in middle school. My 8th grade is when I got down to Atlanta in middle school. And we had an incident where I actually was at fault. I was at fault. However, I was in the principal office, and it happened to be, of course, Anglo-Saxon man in the principal office. He was the principal, and I was sitting with my mother. And this man said in front of my mom, and you know, my mom from Detroit, hardcore Detroit, you know, woman, but a Christian woman. Nevertheless, he said, "Hey, you know what? I really don't care what he's doing. I have my education. He needs to do whatever he needs to do," or something to that effect. Well, my mom, again, being this Christian woman from Detroit, almost jumped over that table because at that particular time, this particular middle school was predominantly Anglo-Saxon or white, right? And so the prejudice was in your face. And so that was a surprise to me as an adolescent. I'm like, what is he talking about? What does that mean? I need help. I don't need, you know, someone to tell me what they already have. I need you to help me with my education. So again, in Atlanta, the experiences, and I'm sure I can talk about a little bit more, but the experiences was totally different than, of course, the short time I was, of course, raised in Detroit, Michigan. And then after that, of course, furthering my experience in moving to the great state of New Mexico.
That's a great journey and a great perspective. And you know, I wonder at that moment in time, has that, you know, being in the principal's office there, I mean, I wonder how did that kind of not necessarily inform, but kind of help you kind of understand that it's not going to be a level playing field, that privilege and perspective and institutional racism absolutely had you start out on a starting block that was back there, as opposed to where I sit right here. How do you think as a young person, can you help us better understand what that felt like?
Indeed. So that was my introduction to real racism. That was the first instance that I can remember or I can recall that was the introduction for racism for me. And then it continued because, of course, at lunchtime or at PE, I started to see segregation in my face. So you had African-American students were on one side of the cafeteria or on one side of the gymnasium. And then you had, of course, Anglo-Saxon kids or white kids on the other side, right? And so I really didn't understand that. But I start to understand because, of course, I had an American history class. And that particular teacher in that American history class grabbed me by the side, you know, because she knew I was new to Atlanta, Georgia. And she started to talk to me about some history. and really helped me understand, or as we say, in our culture, she learned me. She learned me, helped me understand a little bit about, what that really means, what that really meant. This is why, and this is a segue really here, real quick, Kalon, if you don't mind, why it's so important for us as African-American adolescents to be taught our history in grade school, in middle school, and in high school. So people like myself, when we get to middle school, that we understand that this is real. And so we can also understand how to handle it. So back to that story, that was the beginning of my knowledge of real racism and segregation. And so how it made me feel indifferent, because I start to be lost, because I wanted to play with these kids. Because in Detroit, I played with everybody. Everybody was everybody. That's what I was taught. These are the morals
Right.
and the principles my grandmother and my mom taught me. Is everybody is human. We're the same. And so when I got down there, and that wasn't, I guess, the case per se, right? It had me confused. So to your question, it had me really confused, and really I felt alone.
Well, it's interesting you say it that way, because you talk about your grandma when she gave you the education and she learned you, right? As Tommy McKinney, one of my dearest friends on the planet, Tommy McKinney, he's been on Cafecito before. That was our bawling session where I don't think I've cried to camera and that hard and that heavy ever. I love him to death. Anyway, he used to talk about his grandma always talking to him about education and how important it is. And now he's got a couple master's degrees and doing great things in DC. But if she learned you that way, as you say, to play with everybody, yet the reality of what you experienced was when you're playing, they were all Black kids. There was a segregation there. I mean, so there's a dissonance there. So I wonder how that actually plays out, because if your elders are telling you, you play with everybody, we're all created equal, you are not less than, but then you are only surrounded with people who look like you. I wonder if there's a dissonance there. I hadn't thought about it, but the way you shared with us this morning, it certainly makes me wonder. And how do you reconcile that?
Absolutely, it's a great question. I think absolutely there was a cognitive dissonance for sure, on both sides. On both sides of the playing field, right? Because again, in the South, at that particular time, my understanding was you don't play with those kids, or those kids don't like you for reasons unknown, right? And then vice versa. Some of them were taught, hey, you don't play with those kids. Those kids are not right for you. However, in my neighborhood at that time, it was a blended neighborhood, right? And we had white kids and Black kids, and in the neighborhood, we would play with each other. However, at school, we could not, or we would not, right? And so that's where the segregation was at that particular time. And it's crazy because this time was like the 1994, 1995. Yes, I'm 40 years old. 1994, 1995. And still at that time, segregation was prominent. It was
Absolutely.
right in your face. It was face. But to that cognitive distancing, absolutely, I think from both sides, if that makes sense to you. Absolutely.
It does. It absolutely does. It absolutely does, because even for the as you say, Anglo-Saxon or white kids who are at home, and mom and dad are saying, well, you're colorblind. We're colorblind. We're not racist. We don't see people's skin color, which I've certainly come to embrace the concept that that's a big part of the problem, is we don't see skin color. And until we do, we can't start having candid conversations about how that skin color has impacted our personal journeys, whether it's mine of privilege, who is a Hispanic male who presents as a white male, or you who is a Black man. We have to see skin color. But for those white children who are being given those messages, yet when they go out on the playground, they're still on that side of the playground, playing on those tether balls, playing with those kickballs, playing with those soccer balls, and then you're on this other side of the field. That's a fascinating. I don't know. For me, I don't know why I'm taken with that this morning, but it's not something I've thought about before. So I appreciate you sharing that. Tell us. So you go from that. So Detroit, and then the next stop, and then you come here. Now you've gone to a position where, or a place where, you couldn't be surrounded with black men if you tried. I mean, you got to really work. You got to really work. Like, this is my 8th week of amplifying Black voices, and I'm so grateful that I haven't had to work real hard, because somehow my journey has deeply connected me with so many beautiful Black men and women that it's been easy to do this outreach, and a real blessing, and I consider it a privilege to have done this outreach. But look, it's no joke, right? Like 3%. Those are the numbers. That's where we're at. Maybe the next census will show different, but unfortunately it may show less, because frankly, our people of color in New Mexico are going to be even more undercounted than our general population. So I don't know what's going to happen with the census. So if you haven't done your census form, please do it now, 2020census.gov. But what was that shift like to come to New Mexico, Alfonso?
If I may digress, and that's a great question. One of the things that I'm really proud of, Ms. Colon, is first, I had a great perception or deception, I think, from those experiences, right? Even from 8th grade, even to my 12th grade year, because a lot of people don't know this, but like I said, my life is an open book. I dropped out of school in 11th grade. I went back to an alternative school that was connected to my high school. So I got an education from the alternative school. So I was able to graduate through my high school, if that makes sense to you. And then I went to a small college called, my junior college called Coastal Georgia College in Brunswick. At that particular time, my first year, I really had the same mindset. I was like, well, how am I going to do this? My grandmother taught me education is key. She was an educational teacher. She taught me some economic principles. My mom taught me some economic principles. Her work ethic was off the Richter scale, but I was still struggling with kind of understanding life skills. And so when I got down to my first year, I really didn't want to be there. I was kind of confused, things like that. But a guy, Jason, I'll never forget him. He took me by his coattail and he taught me about life skills. And I had the choice, right? A cognitive choice to either listen or continue to do what I wanted to do. I chose to listen and understand his perspective when it comes to life skills. Fast forward through that, my second year, I ran for SGA. I became the SGA president. When I became the SGA president, through that time, I started to understand how education works. One of the things that really pushed me and encouraged me was I saw more women attracted to education, to guys who really wanted to educate themselves instead of guys who were on the wayside. So I was like, it's something that I got to do to get these women attention.
So now we know the real motivation, Mr. President. Now we know the real. See, this is real talk on Cafecito con Colon. It's real talk. So bring it. Keep going.
Absolutely. And so with that, I found out that, okay, so not only that can I get these women attention, but education was really key for me to move forward in life, right? And so what I did was I developed this men's series where after school program where men can come and actually talk with one another, help each other with their lessons or school work and things like that. Well, it began to get bigger because obviously these men have girlfriends. So the ladies wanted to come. And so they started to come, and their IQ, obviously, and kudos to all the women on this call, their IQ was a little higher, right? So they got to help us with some of our work, our stats, our trigonometry, our history and things like that, our essays, thesis, and whatever the case may be. And so it just started to expand and expand. And so we changed it. About 5 members of the SGA team, we changed it. So we changed it to a outreach program to where motivational speakers started to come into this program. And it's still there to this day, this program we had big names come in to come talk to the student body about, of course, furthering their education, how education is important, how economics is important, and things like that. And so that's how my mind is structured today, and it always have been. And so that's what I'm really proud of. I hold that because I was able to coin that there in Brunswick, Georgia, at Coastal Georgia College. And so again, my self-deception was so low. But when I got there and I met this Jason guy, I call him this Jason guy, he really was able to, what we call today, level me up, right? Help me understand how important these principles are to move forward in life. And then, of course, from that, I moved to New Mexico, the great state of New Mexico. And
hold that thought. I really want to put an exclamation mark on that program you started, because I'm a huge advocate for mentorship. And frankly, for, even this morning, I start my Thursday mornings historically at 4:30. Now that we're Zooming, but we have I have a men's group that meets on Thursday mornings at 6:30 every Thursday morning. And I know the power of that collective space where you can actually be candid and transparent and vulnerable, because frankly, men don't do that frequently enough. We don't have many safe spaces to be able to do that. And so I really appreciate, I want to give a shout out to one of our guests who's coming on, I think Friday, what that would be tomorrow. I think Rodney Bowe from the UNM Men of Color. And if you haven't plugged into his work, I hope that you will do that, Alfonso, because it sounds like you set up that similarly over there. And what was the name of your work, the name of your group?
So it was the outreach group. We didn't have a specific name at that particular time. We were young. It was an outreach group. We didn't really put a title on it because, of course, it'd be infringement on the actual college itself. So we could not do that. But it was an outreach program, and so we brought in motivational speakers for that, for sure.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I posted a couple links because it turns out Mike Espy is also from Yazoo City. I didn't know that. He's about to be United States Senator in the Club of 100. But Mike Espy, your grandma, and Zig Ziglar. I love it. Hey, before you get to the next stop in Albuquerque, your dad wants you to talk a little bit about discipline. How did that play a role in your upbringing?
Oh my goodness. Oh man.
You were gonna let it go. You were gonna let it go. You saw the comment, you were gonna let it go, but I'm like, wait, this is a good field to plow right here. Let's plow it.
Absolutely. So discipline was really, really huge in my family. From my dad, growing up, the short time I was there in Detroit with him, and then of course my mom, but it was all with the family. Like I said, in Detroit in that day, everybody was your disciplinary when it comes to an adult, the whole block, because the whole block knew each other, knew your parents. So if your parents were at work, because in that day, a parent can actually go to work and you can stay home. If you were 12, 13, you could stay home, you were safe, because the next door neighbor knew that you were at home and mom had to go to work, right? And so discipline was from my grandmothers, both sides were really my hearts. I mean, my grandmother, his mother, my father's mother, died at 102 years old. My mom's mom died at, I believe, at the young age of 96, I believe, and I may be wrong. She may correct me. But both of them were real seasoned and had a lot of knowledge. But as far as the discipline, both disciplined me. When I say discipline, I mean, it was more than a belt. It was more than a switch. Both disciplined me, but they disciplined me the right way. They talked to me, helped me understand what I did wrong, helped me understand how to do it right the next time, but told me, I love you, but I have to discipline you. So they disciplined me. You know, my dad disciplined me. My mom disciplined me. Like I said, the neighbors disciplined me. So there was enough discipline to go around for everybody. But yeah, absolutely. The discipline was there. But I think most of all, alongside the discipline was the teaching. The teaching was huge. The moral compass, things like that, the principles, the life principles were more valuable than me looking at how I was disciplined, right? And I think that what has helped me today, because I've been through a lot. You know, I've been through a lot in my life. I've made a lot of wrong choices. And guys, if you're here to listen to something else, it's probably the wrong day, because I'm very transparent with my life. I made a lot of wrong choices, and I've made the decision to turn those wrong choices into right choices and to be that example for my kids.
I love that. When you communicate with your children, and you got 4 little ones, 6 altogether, when you sit them down and say, let me just tell you, I've made a lot of bad decisions, a lot of wrong choices, uh, but when you're growing up, there's this one wrong choice that I made, and you spoke to kind of dropping out, and now you sit here today with a post baccalaureate degree. You got an MBA, highly educated, highly impactful. But what are some of those other decisions that you made that you try and communicate to them? But more importantly, not just what's the bad decision, but what's the morsel of truth? What's the takeaway? What's the strength that you got because you went through that pain?
So some of the morals that and principles that I teach my kids now are based upon who they are. So I try to instill in them that you, despite of your color, despite of your background, despite of the mistakes that you're going to make, there's always an alternative. There's always a better way. So of course, the importance of my life, I think, again, as I alluded to in the first part of this segment, is that it's a testament. So I encourage them to look at Dad's life. You don't want to experience the same things I experienced the way I did. So your choices have to be better than my choices when you come in contact with these struggles, or when you come face to face with these different challenges in your life. And so I try to, of course, be ahead of the eight ball when it comes to their knowledge of life, as much as I can, so they can understand when they come in contact. Yeah, Dad told me that I will be facing this. Dad told me that this will be a challenge in my life. But here's how he told me I can, or suggested, right? I can actually overcome. Overcome is a good word for me. And so that's the type of morals. And then when it comes to just them being who they are, they can be anybody they want to be. If it's the president, if it's an official, if it's an entrepreneur. So I instill economic principles in my kids as much as I can. So when I have them with me, we're reading. When I have them with me, we're talking about how to be successful. We're talking about how important your academics are, how important to have A's and B's. If my twins, they love to play football, but I said you can't have C's and F's trying to get into college playing football. You have to have a 2.5, those different things that I try to really instill in my kids, so they are cognizant of these things as they go through life.
So it sounds like you have that beautiful open communication, and we posted up that wonderful picture of those children. But when I look at that picture, the first thing that I wondered, I'll admit to you, was I wonder how you communicate with them, and what messages are you giving them now, and maybe what questions are they asking now during this time since George Floyd's murder, uh, and during this movement, which, thank goodness, as I sit here today in the ninth week of this conversation in amplifying Black voices, we do realize that it's not going to be a flash in the pan. This really is a tipping point for our nation. And for those of us that are trying to listen and learn, we're far more educated. I mean, 2 years ago, I couldn't have told you who Dr. Kendi was. I couldn't have told you that American University has an anti-racism institute that he founded. I couldn't tell you about the book, The Indigenous History of the United States of America, that gives you the perspective of the Native Americans who were enslaved by the colonizers, who we so elegantly called settlers when I was growing up, right? So what kind of conversations, if you will, and if you're comfortable, because you and I are both open books, and that's the only reason I feel comfortable asking you, is what have those conversations sounded like in your home with those four beautiful children that were in that picture?
Great question. So one of the things that I brought up to them actually as of late is, I talked about a few minutes ago, self-deception, right? And so in the Arbinger Institute, self-deception actually determines one's experience in every aspect of life. The extent of which it does that, and in particular, the extent into which it determines the nature of one's influence on and experience of others. with that being said, I try to, that conversation has been, well, how do you feel, Dad? You know, and then of course I give it back to them. Well, how do you feel? And they're not happy about it, right? Because they see themselves, you know, from both sides. So my kids are mixed. My 4 kids that are on a picture, they're mixed with Hispanic and they're mixed with African American. So they're on both sides of the fence. And so I still, the paradigm is really shifted when I speak to them, because I don't dwell on the accident itself. I still encourage them on those same principles and morals, that even though you see this happening in the land, yes, be sad, yes, care, but I want you to understand that this is not your reality. And I don't want that to set in their mind that this is their reality, because again, they're going to walk around it. And this is just my perspective. I think if it sets in their mind that this is their reality, they're going to walk around in fear. I don't want my kids to walk around in fear of the police, walk around in fear of, you know, the reactions from their peers or whatever the case may be. Really quick, in New Mexico, in the corporate world, it's really hard for African Americans. I recall, and I'm gonna get back to what you asked me. I told my kids, when I open my mouth, because I speak to CEOs on a day-to-day basis, I've had CEOs tell me, wow, I never heard a presentation like that, or I didn't think this, you know, the information that you gave me was real until I explained it in such, I guess, in depth, if you will. And I knew that when I walked in that office, that the perception was, oh, it's just another, you know, Black kid or another, you know, Black employee, you know, who maybe speaks a certain way or doesn't know what he's talking about, right? Until I, you know, open my mouth. And so what I tell them is, I don't want this to be your reality. You know, I want you to be educated. I want you to understand when you're stopped by the cops that you obey the orders of the cops. Understand that the perception that's out there is a reality, that you may be racially profiled. Now that's a reality, but it's not your reality that you're going to get shot if you're stopped by the police. It's not your reality that, of course, you can't get in life what you want to get. That is not your reality. Your reality, if you put your foot to the plow and you do the things that that Dad is explaining to you, you know, that you can be anybody that you want to be. You know, I try to get them not listening to a lot of the social media. Don't listen to a lot of social media. Let Dad take on that for you, you know, but let me walk that through with you. This is why they're saying what they're saying. So my point is, in saying all that, is I try to explain to them what's going on, but also that is not your reality, because I don't want them to walk in fear, if that makes sense to you.
I think it makes a lot of sense. I guess, and who am I to push back a little bit, but I guess my fear would be, if you help them understand that doesn't have to be their reality, how do you also balance that with a message of safety and care? And how do you balance that with a message of saying that, yeah, there may be a time when you're sitting across from somebody who's conducting a job interview, and you're going to be the person who ought to get that job, but because of your pigmentation, you're going to get the rejection letter. Because I mean, we know that just from a statistical standpoint and from a lived experience of the masses, we know that there's a strong possibility that is going to be their reality at some point, right? Am I missing something? Am I
No.
off?
No. So you're right in a sense that, of course, that may happen. So they may sit across from a person where, of course, that they may be, what do you want to call it? They may be fifth in line as opposed to first in line. However, if I teach my kids to dwell on that, Brian, if I teach them to walk into situations with that mindset, they will have a defeated mindset. And so I don't want my kids to have a defeated mindset. Yes, that may happen, but understand that when you walk into that place, you walk in with your chin up. You walk in with the confidence that this can be yours. This can be your office, or you can be that entrepreneur, right? You walk in with that mindset. So the paradigm, as I alluded to, is totally different. Totally different. So you're walking with the confidence that this is mine, right? And if it doesn't work out, guess what? You get up, you dust yourself off, and you try again. And you get better at what, and you perfect your craft. So the next time, not just they looking at your resume, but when you go into that interview, you shine better than you did before, and you learn from that situation.
You know, such a great answer. I mean, I think that may be, you know, one of the highlights of today. That's perfect. And in fact, as you're speaking, it is resonating with me because it is absolutely, we opened up with talking about your grandma and Zig Ziglar. And frankly, those are the same, when you put those pots on the stove, you boil them down. It's the same approach, right? It's that positive mental attitude. And as Zig used to say, you know, a positive mental attitude won't get you everything, but it's going to get you a lot farther than a negative one, right? And you're just trying to frame that for your children as it relates to the systemic racism that they may bounce up against, and that frankly, they will bounce up against, right?
Absolutely.
And so I really appreciate that answer. I really appreciate that answer. Let's talk. Go ahead.
No, just
Alfonso.
real quick. One of the things that you know that Stephen Covey coined, and that I love, you know, to tell my kids is understand before being understood. You have to understand the situation or the climate of the situation that you're in before, you know, well, what happened to me? Well, what about me? Well, you have to understand the big picture. And so that's what I try to project to my kids, is just really understanding the big picture.
I love that. And I'm a fan of Covey's, and we have a close connection in New Mexico with Stephen Covey Jr. I think it's Jr. Anyway, his son, you know, he has a partner here in Albuquerque, Ann Rhodes of Southwest Airlines and JetBlue fame. And my dear friend, Ann is amazing. But she does a lot of work and is a partner with Covey Institute. And so, you know, spot on. Great resource. I've tried to post some links today to some of those resources. And before I get to your next, I want to take us now to your Albuquerque experience, the last 14 years, if you will. But before I do that, can you give me the name? You quoted something very powerful, and you referenced the institute that published that. And I wanted to post that link up if I can. So can you give me the name of that? And then let's talk a little bit about the Albuquerque experience for Alfonso Thompson.
The name of that institute is the Arbinger, Arbinger Institute. Okay,
great. So tell us. So now it's 14 years ago, and you're going from two populations that have a great representation of African Americans, Black women and men, and then you get here in Albuquerque. That's a shift.
Okay, yeah, absolutely.
Right. Tell us what that transition was like, and tell us about that lived experience.
Absolutely. So coming to New Mexico, yeah, definitely a shocker. You know, I visited this place several times and loved it. You know, I am an advocate for New Mexico. I love New Mexico. No matter where you go, it's a different experience. You can go south. You know, what's crazy is you can travel through Carrizozo, where it's all desert. You can get to Ruidoso, and it's like you're in the East Coast, you know, because it's so right. It's littered with trees and palm trees and just beautiful. But I love New Mexico. So coming here was a delight. Actually, it definitely was a shocker. But what was delight? I mean, this is a nest pool of different cultures. I love the Hispanic culture. I love the Native culture. Just the cultures that represent every day in New Mexico. I love it because everybody can come together. One of the biggest things that really caught me off guard was everybody was nice. You know, I know a lot of people that's right. from here, like, well, people are mean. I'm like, well, where I'm from, you don't, you don't really look at another person, you know. But everybody, you know, waves at you for the most part and speaks to you, how you doing, you know, just genuinely cares about, you know, your well-being. And so that was really, you know, homely, and I was used to that with the Southern hospitality. And then, of course, getting into the corporate world, I joined the corporate world with Enterprise Rent-A-Car, and that was a neat experience, you know. So I hadn't, of course, experienced any racism at that point, you know. because they welcomed me with open arms. You know, they hired college students and things like that. So that was a really fun experience. After that, I left and I joined another organization, and because I wanted to move up, you know, in my corporate experience, and that's when it got challenging. You know, this position was operations manager for Hertz Rent a Car here in Albuquerque, and it was about five candidates, and I was actually told to my face, you know, by the regional manager at that particular time out of Oklahoma, that I wasn't the candidate they were looking for. Why? I wanted to inquire about that. Like, well, what does that mean, that I'm not the candidate? Well, we wanted somebody with this education and of course that education. Well, I have this education. I have that education. I have this experience. What do you really mean? So at that particular time, it was another guy who got the operations position at that particular time, and he happened to be a white guy. Didn't have the credentials I did, but got the position. So I knew in my mind that, you know, I didn't call it out as something like a racial experience, but it had to be. It had to be. And then of course, crazy thing is 2 months into his career, he was fired. So the next candidate in line was myself. So they brought me on board, and he didn't bring me on board. And I'm referring to the regional vice president at that time, but the area manager brought me on board, called me and decided to bring me on board as a candidate. And I served for them for about 3.5 years. And so, and as my career progressed, I mean, I tried to fight my way up and fight my way up and fight my way up. And I'm not going to lie, you know, I was a second and third candidate in a lot of different areas. But again, my mindset going in was confident that no matter what, no matter how I'm pushed back or I'm discouraged, I'm going to keep going. So did I have that experience that you said that my sons may have, sitting across from an employer or an interview, and I, you know, and I was pushed back, you know, and another candidate was presented before me? Yes, I had those experiences, but again, I walked in, and I continue to walk into this day to different settings, different tables, with the confidence that I belong here.
I love that. I love that. I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you. We are a nice people in New Mexico. There's 2.1 million of us, and we're pretty nice. And I'm glad you're a part of us and have been for 14 years. Look, I'm going to give you an opportunity to have the final word and kind of share with us anything that you didn't get a chance to do. And I'll give you a minute to think about that. And I want to just, well, there's so many great comments, and all the links that I posted on my laptop, I'm not seeing them show up on my phone stream. So I wonder if all my links didn't go through today. Maybe somebody can tell me, but I posted everything from Mike Espy, Zig Ziglar, the Arbinger Institute. I don't see any of them on that thread, and that makes me sad because I posted up a lot of good links this morning when we started, and I don't see them on here. But I want to say that I reached out to Melanie Burns of Achievement Gallery fame, a tremendous business leader in New Mexico. And with Melanie's help, what we're going to do, everybody's been asking for these Cafecito con Colon cups. And so what we're going to do is this. I'm going to order a few dozen, I think, and Melanie's going to help me with that. And I've got somebody who's going to underwrite the cost of those. And what we're going to do is for $20, and I'll give you my Venmo or my Cash App or something like that to make it easy. Anybody who wants one of these cups, you just make a $20 donation, and 100% of those proceeds, I think we'll raise a few $100, is going to go to the New Mexico Hispanic Bar Association UNM Law Camp. It will go to benefit the law camp, where we bring in 7th and 8th graders, particularly 7th and 8th grade children of color, an underrepresented population, to introduce them not just to law, but this sleepaway camp that Aleli and I, with the help of Fred Perez, founded 17 or 18 years ago now. We've been changing the lives of 24 kids a year. And we will take a portion, we will take that money and help make sure that that program continues. We have changed the trajectory of underrepresented students now for almost 2 decades by exposing them to the UNM experience and to talking to them about higher education and trying to fill the pipeline. Lots of law camps and programs and summer things for high school kids, but there was not a lot out there for middle school kids. And if we don't get them before they get to high school, we lose them. So we're trying to fill that pipeline with young women and young boys and girls of color. And we're going to take 100% of those donations and put them to the NMHBA UNM Law Camp. And then we're going to take the other half of that and we're going to give it to the Roots Camp, which I've been promoting all week. This is Kathy McGill's camp, the New Mexico Black History. Is it New Mexico Black History Organization?
Black Leadership Council. I'm a part of it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Alfonso, for being my guardrails this morning, keeping me on track. So yes, the Black Leadership Council, Kathy McGill, you've seen me post up, you've seen me put up the links for registration. I went out there to visit with those children, to put my hands on the camp that is amazing. They've done just amazing things with those students this week. And so we're going to take these proceeds and we're going to give them to those two camps that are making a difference in changing the trajectory of young boys and girls of color in our community. So tomorrow I'll do a better job of posting up Venmo and Cash App, where you can text me at 270-2154, 270-2154. And we're going to get you a free Cafecito con Colon coffee mug with a $20 or greater contribution to those two camps. And I'll get with Kathy and we're going to get that money over to Roots Camp and the New Mexico Hispanic Bar UNM Law Camp. Thank you, Enlace, Dr. Lawrence Roybal, Dr. Jennifer Gomez Chavez, Ernestina Cruz, all the people that helped keep that camp alive for almost 20 years now at UNM. And then thanks to Kathy for making a deep impact in our community with those beautiful kids of color that are engaging with Roots Camp. So we're running over time, but I don't mind because I don't have to pay for this airtime. It's just me and Alfonso here. And we had great participation today. We still have a few dozen people online. We got up to almost 50 people this morning, Alfonso, and I'm sure by the end of the today, with all these shares, we'll have over 1,000 views. So for those folks that are going to tune in to learn a little bit about Alfonso's philosophy on life, Alfonso's lived experience during this Black Lives Matter movement, during this time where we have to understand, what's the great quote you had from Covey? Understand to be understood.
Understand before being understood.
Understand before being understood. And the best way we can understand, Alfonso, is to listen. And Dean Mathewson says that's his favorite Covey quote. And so help us understand while we listen to you and you close out today's Cafecito con Colon.
Indeed. Really quick, Anik, this is the book. I don't know if you can see it. It's called Leadership and Self-Deception by the Airbringer Institute. Leadership and Self-Deception. That's the book. One of the things, and I'll close with this. First of all, thank you so much, Brian. Thank you for all the viewers that took time out to listen to me today. I think it's really important. Obviously, we know that there's systemic racism all over the country and outside the country and today, but I think it behooves all of us to bind together. I know that's a challenging thing, but if we make the conscious choice to talk to our neighbor, to do the things that Brian is doing, to discuss these things and bring them to the forefront, and of course, bind together the organizations that are here in the state of New Mexico, is vitally important, from the OAA, Office of American Affairs, to the African American Chamber, to the Black Leadership Council. If we can come together and put away the differences of past and come together and join together in a joint effort to collectively help the community economically, right? Help the community economically, educationally, really help the African American community have a voice, so we're not bickering back and forth, and we're able to communicate our need as one body, not separate entities. And so if we can help with that effort, if you've heard nothing else that I've said, please understand this. We all need one another. No matter what side of the fence you on, we need each other. We need to work together. And I'm here to do that. So in any area that I can help your organization, please reach out to me, Thompson Hard Work 911 at gmail.com. Thompson Hard Work 91 at gmail.com. I'm here to help you, not just with the ear, but with my hands. As Mr. Colon said in the beginning of this conversation, I did not just say yes to this meeting, but I say yes to me helping each and every one of you come together. And again, God bless you all.
That's a beautiful way to close out. I hope that my links were connecting, the ones that I put online here. I posted up a link to that leadership self-deception. I'm going to make sure that Alfonso, take a second there to put your contact information in a comment, because I know you've got your phone there. I think we want to make sure people can reach out to you, get some support for their organization, and you know, just be enriched by engaging with a tremendous leader. Leadership and leader are two different things, and you bring leadership, and I'm grateful for that, Alfonso. Thank you for saying yes. Thank you for being a wonderful friend. I appreciate you so much. I'm glad our paths continue to cross. They'll continue to cross even more often in the future. And folks, today, take a minute, reach out to people who are in isolation and tell them they're not alone. Help folks listen and learn. Help folks know better so that they can be better and do better. Make it a beautiful day in the land of enchantment or wherever you're tuning in from. I know Tom's tuning in from London. We're glad you're here this morning. My cousins or my nephews from the Philippines, I'm really so thrilled to have them on with us on Cafecito con Colon. Make it a beautiful day. Alfonso, thank you. God bless. And we'll see you tomorrow with Rodney Bowe, who's going to be our guest on Cafecito con Colon. We're looking forward to having Dean Alfred Mathewson join us here in the next week or so, and lots of great guests as we continue to amplify beautiful Black voices as we celebrate Black excellence in New Mexico. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you for joining us on Cafecito con Colon. Hasta mañana. Adios. Thanks, Alfonso.